The TWAB this week has something I've been dreading for multiple days, as I saw tweets and tidbits from various Discord servers that before yesterday it was an 8,600 word TWAB, and as of yesterday DMG said more closer to 9,000. So, that being said, this is going to be as much compressed as I could possibly give you. This will still be quite a bit, as I will need to elaborate on some things and explain them for the general populace that isn't sure what it means. But that being said, it's time to get into it. Now, a bunch of this is all just fluff, talking about Destiny and bleh, and then we get to here. Now, this is basically some of the stuff. Now, when they start talking over things, the main things they want to talk about regarding player versus player, aka, Crucible, is some things they want to talk about. So they want to introduce levers to tune how players build for airborne gunplay. Looking at you, Stompy Hunters. And then as well, allow players to mitigate flinch stats. They're going to start addressing that and expanding upon it. Reduce the number of one-hit kills in player versus player. So they're going to reduce yes, shotguns can still one-tap if you're close enough. Snipers can one-tap to the brain. But what they're aiming for is to deal with things that, like, say you get a buff on your charge with light, and then all of a sudden your aggressive frame sniper can one-shot to the body. They don't want that. That becomes too easy. So, with that being said, as well, continuing forward, addressing common feedback on weapons across all game modes. So, those are some of the big tip things that we're going to be seeing. But to start up first, Glaives! A brand new addition to Witch Queen that has been sort of underperforming in a bit. So, the intents they cover with Glaives and talk about things is with Glaives, they want to make it so that Glaive melee should activate perks that trigger off base melee damage or kills. For example, ammo refill from Grave Robber, the weapon damage buff from Swashbuckler, ammo refilled on sealed Ahamkara Grasp. Basically, they want the Glaive melee to have the stats of be treated as a normal kinetic melee, but not be, weirder. And it does have an extended range in comparison before people complain about it. Now, as well, Glaive melee should not activate perks that trigger off powered melee damage or kills, or require expending subclass melee energy. For instance, a combination blow or assassin's cowl, something like Kepri's sting, something like that. Now, Glaive melee should benefit from the melee damage buffs, such as Winter's Guiles or Wormgod Caress. Pay attention to that, because if you equip Wormgods and have a Glaive, every melee from then should theoretically get the bonus and be doing massive damage. Glaive melee should not benefit from weapon damage buffs such as Rampage, Killclip, or Swashbuckler, but Glaive projectiles specifically should benefit from such things. That actually makes sense. With that expectation set, there are some inconsistencies with how these are implemented in-game, some of which we've already fixed, some of which we'll look at in the future. So far, Glaives have been buffed in this way. Here's what has been changed this season. Glaive projectile hits to reach max energy decreased from 6 hits to 4. Glaive melee can now be interrupted by a hunter dodge. The Grave Robber perk now pulls from reserves on Glaives instead of generating ammo. Glaives no longer get stuck in Clang recovery when using a melee attack on each other. Sealed Ahamkara Grasp no longer reloads Glaives on projectile hits, but it does on melee hits as expected and intended. Glaive melees can no longer stunlock high health combatants, and Glaive melee kills now track in match history for bounties and so forth. Now, what's going to be changing as of next season as follows. We're pushing Glaives deeper into the roles of hard-hitting melee damage and near-complete protection when shielded, as well as increasing projectile speed to make them more reliable at range. As such, note, the Glaive shield grants 97.5 damage resistance in PvE, with 75% in PvP. So it's a nigh unkillable mode while you have the shield up. Increased melee damage versus PvE enemies, except for bosses and vehicles, by 25%, a quarter buff to melee damage to almost everything in the game. Reduce enemy drain speed, or energy drain speed while shielded by 30%, so your shield can last much longer, and the projectile speed will be dependent upon the range stat itself. For instance, at 0 stat, this increased from 30 to 60 meters a second, but at the 100 stat, it increased from 80 to 100 meters per second. So basically, at that point, range is going to be mitigated, so regarding the range stat, 3 Glaives will shoot projectiles at different speeds. Something to be an important note in case you don't know, because all 3 of the exotic Glaives had different fire rate stats. So that being said, as well as range. So they will actually genuinely feel different, and they will travel at different speeds now. One thing to note. Now, as well, exotic glaives are getting another buff because they launched Lackluster. Starting off, Titan Glaive's Edge of Actions will now gain a Void Overshield while inside of the bubble itself. The Helm of Saint 14 buff now applies to the bubble as it does Ward of Dawn. Now as well, Warlock Glaives, the Edge of Intent, its healing turret will increase the speed and acceleration of healing turret projectiles, which I do believe means that it'll just be a lot faster. The Hunter Glaive Edge of Concurrence will get triple damage of the wave detonation and increase the amount of enemies it can chain from 4 to 8, effectively doubling its reach and tripling its damage. So, a good start to apply. I did definitely feel like all these were a bit lackluster. Unique, effective, but not what they at all should have been for the next generation of class-specific swords. Now, something else they covered at the very start, Flinch, and something that is annoying for PvP, and they cover how they're going to do this. Note that higher assumed weapons are more affected by Flinch, which we took into account when tuning the numbers. So, the breakdown of Flinch as they're going to run it. So basically, they rebuilt stability with the weapon stat to grant Flinch resistance in addition to other stats with a maximum Flinch resistance of 10% to 25% depending on the archetypes. With this change, players can build for Flinch resistance more easily on weapons that feel flinch more than others, and less on special weapons which we don't want to be easier to use when under fire. Now, a breakdown as it goes. 25% flinch resistance. Let me say, this is all with 100 stability, so if somehow you get 100 stability with these things, then this will be your flinch resistance that'll be naturally given to you dependent on your weapons. For auto rifles, SMGs, and bows, you'll get a 25 damage resistance at 100 stability. Pulse rifles, scout rifles, sidearms, and machine guns at 20%. Hand cannons and trace rifles with 15% flinch reduction and 10% for fusion rifle, shotgun, sniper rifle, grenade launcher, both breach and drum, linear fusion, both special and heavy, and rocket launchers. So that is the amount of flinch resistance you can expect dependent on the stability stat. Of course, they do mention that it has to be 100 stability. Now, note that a stability stat of below 20 will technically have a small flinch resistance penalty, but only around 5 weapons have a stability stat in that range. So it's the same sort of thing with stats, where if you get below a certain number, it will no longer be a benefit, it will be a detriment and actually affect your resistance. Mentioning it here because it's a related change, the Resilience character stat now grants flint resistance at a 0% at 0 stat, 10% at 10 stat. So you can gain 10% bonus flinch resistance just because you have max resilience. Examples of how this can go: a 100 stability stat Suros Pulse Rifle with Suro Synergy active, 10 resilience and no distractions at 2 unflinching pulse armor mods while buffed by a rally barricade. This is pretty much the ultimate flinch resistance. You'll get 0.8%, 0.8%, 0.9%, 0.65, 0.7, 0.5, equals 0.1, i.e., which will, all of these will result in 90% flinch resistance if you spec out entirely for it. But at 70 stability stat hand cannon, 5 resilience at 1 unflinching hand cannon armor mod would be a 39% flinch resistance. So there are ways that people can spec out entirely to have flinch resistance now if they want that. But of course, it'll be a lot more effort than just equipping 2 unflinching armor mods and then leaving it at that. Now, airborne gunplay. Basically what every Stompy Hunter relies upon. This is getting reworked entirely. They've added a new weapon stat, Airborne Effectiveness, which is present on all weapons except those where being airborne doesn't have an effect, swords for example, which maps onto aspects of airborne gunplay with these guidelines. Basically, with little to no investment, 0 to 30 on the airborne stat, a character will have a small accuracy penalty with then retail, but will have a significantly lower aim assist. And with minimal investment, 31 to 50 stat, the character will have around the same in-air accuracy as Icarus equipped weapons do currently, but with noticeably lower aim assist. With substantial investment to the stat, 51 to 70 numbers, a character will have better accuracy than retail weapons with Icarus, with fewer misses due to randomness, but with reduced aim assist. With very specialized investment around 71 to 99, a character will have no airborne accuracy penalty and very slight aim assist, or slightly less aim assist, and with full investment of full 100 stat, characters will have no airborne accuracy penalty and the same aim assist. Now, the tuning is going to be special to all exotic weapons, everything that's shipped in 16 or 17, and everything that's been shipped as Trials of Osiris or Nightfall loot. Older legendary weapons have a default value set per weapon archetype to a value just below the middle of all the allowed stat range. Note, this will be a hidden stat at Season 17, similar to aim assist and recoil direction. They'll be able to check this on stat-specific weapons through the API, and in Season 18, several previously hidden stats will be visible on weapons inspection screen. Now, the stat influences several aspects of airborne gunplay. Aim assist cone penalty angles, i.e. auto-aim angle, reticle friction and adhesion angle, a high penalty to this at 0 stat, and a low or 0 penalty at 100 stat. The accuracy cone for primary weapons, a lower penalty than current at 0 stat, 0 penalty at 60 to 100. Now, I'm not going to go through all these, but basically it's describing how airborne effectiveness is going to be applied and various other things. If you care specifically about how this functions, there you go, all these sort of different archetypes. Now, what this means overall is that you'll get fewer misses due to randomness from the accuracy cone. You ever notice when you're airborne with the sniper, and even though you could have sworn how that reticle was on somebody's head, it just missed? That's basically what it's talking about. You'll have fewer misses due to randomness from the accuracy cone while airborne, but reliance on aiming is much higher at low stat. This makes it easier, and you will need to build into airborne, but with decent aim, you'll land more body shots instead of crits. Before and after examples of the cone penalty. With a hand cannon, before 0.667 degrees airborne accuracy penalty, but after 0 stat would be 0.50, and 60 stat would be 0 degrees entirely. And with the sniper before, it would be 3 degrees, after 0 stat, 2 degrees, 60, all these sort of things. The airborne effectiveness stat comes from 3 sources: weapon, subclass, and armor. The weapons-based airborne effectiveness stat, with ranges varying from 0 to 10 and 0 to 30 depending on the weapon archetype. Exotic weapons typically get bumped up, i.e. higher stat than legendary weapons that archetype, or in that archetype, unless they're already extremely strong. The Icarus grip / Adept Icarus grip will grant plus 15 to this stat, and certain weapon perks such as the new redesigned Air Assault coming back soon will affect these things. Valid stat ranges for legendary weapons. This is broad. This is not exotics specifically, but everything. The valid stats would be 0 to 25 for hand cannons, 0 to 30 for sidearms, 0 to 25 for auto rifles, 0 to 25 for pulse scout rifles, 0 to 20 submachine guns, 0 to 30 bow, 0 to 20 sniper rifles, 0 to 5 shotgun, 0 to 5 fusion, 0 to 10 breach grenade launcher, 0 to 5 trace, 0 to 15 rocket launcher, 0 to 10 machine gun, 0 to 20 linear fusion rifle, 0 to 15, drums, 0 to 20, and glaives, 0 to 15. What they're trying to do here is things that are supposedly easier to handle in just general, like imagine shooting a sidearm midair as opposed to shooting a sniper rifle midair. That does not translate slightly. So, the things that should be easier to fire midair will be like submachine guns, hand cannons, and sidearms, but other things will be a little bit more difficult, especially shotguns and sniper rifles, as that is pretty much the bane of what people have been dealing with in the Crucible. Now, higher tiers of legendary weapons, aka Trials, Raid, and Nightfalls, use the upper end of these ranges, as with other stats. Some examples of exotic weapon outliers. Sweet Business has a 27 stat, and Merciless at 15, Fighting Lion at 12, Sunshot at 27, Skyburner Oath at 35, so that's particularly accurate airborne. Rat King at 30, the Huckleberry 33, Ace of Spades at 14, as an example of an exotic that doesn't need any buffs. Chaperone at 1 for the same reason. Thunderlord at 16, Traveler's Chosen at 35, and something that they are not ready to tell us at 29. Some examples of hand-tuned legendary weapons continues with Frontier's Cry, Deliverance, Submission, Silicon Neuroma, Cantata 57, The Messenger, Hung Jury, Ragnhild, Ignity's Hammer. All of these have their unique airborne accuracy stats. And for subclasses, the Heat Rises ability grants plus 70 to said stack when it's active, i.e. consuming your grenade on the Attunement of Sky air alignment. The Tempered Metal ability will grant plus 20 after getting a solar weapon kill, so that's a slight buff. And the Whisper of Hedron's Stasis Fragment will grant plus 20 aerial accuracy after freezing a target. Specifically for exotic armors that revolve around being airborne or works on specific weaponry, grants a bonus for penalty in the negative 50 to plus 40 range or higher if conditional. This is what made me happy. Foe Tracers grant 20% to all weapons. Mechanier's Sleeves applies plus 50 to all sidearms. Oath Keepers applies plus 40 to all bows. Sealed Hamkara Grass to plus 50 for all weapons 5 seconds after a melee hit. And Lucky Pants get plus 20 hand cannons after readying a hand cannon. A good majority of exotics that are weapon specific, like as you just saw, are either getting big buffs for their unique weapons or broad buffs to everything. Stompies loses 50 air accuracy for every weapon equipped. Stompies is now a detriment to your inborn air accuracy, which makes sense. It's a jump buff. You shouldn't have more control with it. You should have less control. So screw you, Stompy Hunters. You'll now have to spend a lot more time getting your in-air accuracy up, so you can't just spam your shit all day and hit everything. Getting back on track, no backup plans gets plus 30 for all shotguns. Actium War Rig gets plus 30 for auto rifles and machine guns. Hollow Fire Hard gives a plus 20 to all in general. Vine Rampants gets plus 50 but for hip fire only. Peacekeepers plus 40 to submachine guns. Peregrine plus 20 to all. Eyes of Another World plus 15 to all. Astrocyte plus 30 to all. Ophidian Aspect plus 10 to all. Specifically with Necrotic Grips, only plus 30 to the Weapons of Sorrow. So that's Thorn, Osteo, and I think technically Bad Juju, but we'll have to see. Wings of Sacred Dawn plus 50 to all. Boots of the Assembler plus 30% specifically to Lumina, so they're actually supposed to go together. And Redacted, a new exotic coming soon, is going to be a specifically linear fusion. That's interesting. I forgot about that. This means that in general, you want a good airborne effectiveness, say 70, you should pick a weapon with a high stat, put Icarus on it, and either equip an exotic armor piece that helps, or run a subclass, aspect, fragment, or ability. And if you want the best possible effectiveness, you'll generally have to go all in on weapon, exotic, and subclass. Now, some examples as follows. Frontier's Cry with Precision Hand Cannon, bonus Icarus Grip, and Lucky Pants would give you around 79 airborne effectiveness. Submission with Icarus Grip, Stompies, and Tempered Metal would get 27 and 15 minus 50, but then plus 20 when it would round out at 12. It would have very crappy. Taraba, Peacekeepers, and Whispers of Hedrons, which is going to be just the exotic itself, the armor you're running to match it, and just one aspect, 83. And Skynerburner's Oath with Heat Rises is going to be 35 plus 70. So there's going to be some that are going to be real easy to max out on your airborne effectiveness, but there are going to be others that it not only kills it, but is an absolute detriment to everything. Now, this is something they're talking about. I'm not sure what is going on here, but there's a lot of stats they show us, and Stompies. But there's a lot of stats here as well. If you want to just pause and look at each of these, it's basically just what is abused, everything when it comes to these things. Now, for playlist weaponries, they're saying the latest playlist weapons drop from Crucible, Gambit, and Strike activity completions, while older weapons are available for vendor rank packages or can be focused. Now, what they want to do is that playlist weapons now have a chance to roll with extra traits in one or both columns, increasing the number of rank resets that vendor has during a given season. And note, reputation resets each season, so you need to play these activities each season to unlock them. They do not carry over every season. And all playlist weapons from Beyond Light and later will drop in the appropriate origin trait. So the origin traits that go to each of these weapons, they will hopefully apply to everything else in the respective playlists. Bottom dollar will get the Gambit Tracker, Frozen Orbit will get One Quiet Moment, and not Fortissimo, the little punching out will get the Vanguard's Vindication thing. So, going for the stat display, they're also updating some things. Following the recent change to show numbers for all stats instead of just bars, we've opted to change the stat display on weapons to more clearly reflect their capabilities. A weapon stat bar now ranges 0 to 100 instead of being limited to some range in the middle of the bar. This change eliminates rounding and other errors, particularly on adept weapons, masterworks, and enhanced traits, and better conveys the bounds of a weapon stat that can exist within. This is purely a display change. No weapon behavior itself has changed, but you should expect all existing weapon stat bars to look slightly different. Now, the next big thing they wanted to cover, one-shots in the Crucible and special ammo. There are several damage buffs external to weapons that allow them to one-shot kill with much less investment, such as an aggressive sniper with high impact reserves, Ariana's Vow or Le Monarch, specifically when combined with an external 20% damage buff. As example, Empowering Rift can give many sniper rifles one-hit body shot capabilities in the Crucible. Most of the same buff under the hood, so we've adjusted them all at once. With these changes, it's going to be much rarer to get an easy one-hit kill with a weapon that wouldn't typically allow it. Reduce the damage bonus for Empowering Rift, High Energy Fire, and Inertia Override from 20% to 15% against players. No effect in PvE. This is strictly a PvP change. In addition, we don't want special ammo to be less plentiful, making it more difficult to chain special weapon kills. Disabled ammo scavengers outright in PvP. Don't bother putting them on, you won't need them. No matter how much ammo a player was carrying on death, if you pick up special ammo bricks, you can only get one ammo for a shotgun or a sniper, or one kill's worth of ammo, air quotes. For weapons that require more than one shot, e.g. Forerunner, Trace Rifles, you will get however much it requires for that. They retuned several special weapon archetypes and exotics, see below, with the general goal of reducing the effectiveness and uptime of special weapons in the Crucible. Screw you, you stompy, spamming, shotgun, shatter diving hunters, you are dead to me. Now, continuing on with archetypes, they cover a lot of the things that are, broken and abused in all of these things. So, I didn't mean to enhance that, but yeah, this is all the special weapons. A lot more shotguns, a lot more fusion rifles than you would imagine. But ignoring that, special weapons. All special weapons have had their in-air accuracy significantly reduced. While we are okay with encouraging players to build into using their primary weapons more and more effectively in the air, do not believe a prevalence of airborne one-hit kill options is good for PvP. Special weapons have a slightly larger airborne accuracy penalty than primary weapons at 0, airborne effectiveness stat reduced to 0 at 100 stat. Special weapons have a similar airborne assist cone penalty to other weapons, around 50% at 0, and this penalty can be reduced but not entirely removed by investing in airborne effectiveness. Now, sniper rifles are fairly slow to steady, stow to aim, and aimed on sight, which has made snapshot sight field mandatory. So generally, all snipers get reduced stow ready and aim speeds by 10%, i.e. all snipers are now snappier, and there's a matching change to snapshot below. Sniper rifles have less access to ammo than shotguns and fusion rifles, where kills drop ammo right in front of you. So we think ammo scarcity will prevent sniper rifles from spiking intensely. And as you see, these are the various shotgun archetypes that are, surviving. How do I say? Surprise shot package isn't way more dead. I have a feeling that's rapid fire. Yep, that's rapid fire. Now, slug and pellet let me restart that. Slug and pellet shotguns are still overwhelmingly popular in PvP despite recent changes. So we've touched them again in the goal of encountering some diversity in special weapon choice. There's only really 4 of them, so I don't know what you want with that. We're keeping an eye on this change since we've touched shotguns multiple times recently. Don't tell the judge that. Bad joke. And we will adjust it if needed. With this change, we expect shotguns to have a shorter one-hit kill distance, but will be effective enough in that short-range kill role. This change reduces shotgun one-hit kill distance by around 0.5 meters. Because of the importance of the spread angle, it just as hides damage falloff. This has not been touched. Reduce the damage falloff start and end by 1 meter. Reduced aim assist and magnetism fallout and start by 2 meters. I don't know what they want us to do. Because even if you have to be closer to get the one shot 9 times out of 10, if somebody shoots the shotgun shot, they're just going to ape right into a melee anyways. People who have used shotguns forever, they don't blast them and assume it's going to be a one-hit kill. They typically melee to make sure of that. So I have no idea what this is going to really do. People might not get one shot, but they're still going to lose the fight. Reduced damage falloff. I already read that. Fusion rifle usage is trending pretty high, particularly in trials, and bringing shotguns down a little more would make them too good of an option. So we've made a global change. With these changes, 20 meters and out, fusion rifle one-hit kills should be very uncommon, though a combination of damage falloff and recoil changes. Reduced damage falloff near distance, 2 meters at 0 range, which would be 2.7 meters when ADS and a 15 zoom sat. 1.3 meters at 100 range, which would be 2.2 meters when ADS and a 15 zoom stat. So basically, it's going to be harder to kill at range. Reduced damage falloff far distance, and reduced recoil scalar variances between 0 and 100 stability. 0 stability is the same, 100 stability increased to 0.5 and from 0.5 to 0.50. Increased recoil penalty slightly. So, and then we see the stats of, abused various fusion rifles in the meta. Holy crap, there's actually a lot of things here. So, Plug One, Timelines Vertex, Snorri, the main ingredient. Of course, the main ingredient is still the hardest hitting, with Likely Suspect kind of being there, but that sort of thing. But, But then we rebuilt fusion rifles in Season 15. We wanted to differentiate the subfamilies dramatically from each other, which worked. Now that we've seen them in action for a couple seasons, we're pulling back from extremes a little. With these changes, fusion rifle subfamilies are going to be very different from each other, but high impacts are stronger, and rapid fires and precision should be a little less dominant. Oh, excuse me. High impact, reduced unmodified high impact charge time from 1 second flat to 0.96, increased damage per burst by 10. Precisions, increased unmodified charge time from 0.74 to 0.78. Rapid fire, increased unmodified charge time from 0.46 to 0.50, decreased damage per burst by 20. New charge time and damage per burst of all the 4 subfamilies goes as follows with all of this. So, High impact is going to be a little bit slower and a little bit more powerful. Precision, I believe, is going to be a bit slower. Adaptive, unchanged. And rapid fire is going to be a little bit slower and a little bit less damaging. So, rapid fire is not PSO meta anymore. Now, besides Divinity, trace rifles aren't as popular in hard content as we want. Particularly want damage types reworked with the oldest 3 trace rifles to have a chance to shine this season, as we will see. Now, basically, trace rifles get an increased damage buff against non-red bar combatants by 20%, so everything that isn't a red bar gets a 20% buff, and increased ammo picked up per special brick from 18 to 30, so it's not so hard to keep your little trace rifles fed. Now, going into primary weaponry, whew, I'm just going to take a breath from myself because holy crap, this is going along. Primary weapons. Auto rifles and pulse rifles aren't as competitive as we like at mid-range, and lightweight pulse rifles are too hard to use to hit their optimal time to kill. With these changes, we expect auto rifles and pulse rifles to better compete with hand cannons in mid-range and outrange standard zoom submachine guns. So auto rifles get more damage range by 0.75. Pulse rifles increase damage fall off near distance based on the range stats. So 0 range increased from 15 to 16, and 100% range increased from 22 to 24. Note that this is a hip fire fall off distance and is multiplied by zoom value to get the aim down sight fall off distance. Damage fall off far distance remains 40 meters regardless of the range stat, and increase the lightweight pulse rifle damage per bullet from 15 to 16, with a 0.65 precision scaler that will increase precision damage from 2.75 to 26.4. This won't change the optimal time to kill in PvP, will reduce the number of crits required. Now, zoom is an important thing for submachine guns because that increases the range for some reason. So, with this change, several standard zoom submachine guns will be more competitive, but this does make the inaccessible submachine gun with the highest perk trait RNG multi-mock compete less with auto rifles and will no longer straight up outclass every other submachine gun in PvP. Multi-mac nerf, so it's not the best. Increase the damage fall off by 1.5 meters. Adjusted zoom values on most viable legendary submachine guns and 1 exotic. So all of these submachine guns have all been adjusted with a better zoom stat, which results in generally more range. But the multi-mag with a maximum zoom scope is down to 15. Second highest zoom will bring this to 14 instead. So, you know, they all have different zoom levels. Now, we like adaptive submachine guns and are starting to make them again, but in their current form, they killed a little too fast with body shots, so we've reduced body damage to increase their body shot time to kill by 1 bullet without impacting their optimal time to kill. So, decrease body damage from 12 to 11.25, and increase precision damage multiplier from 1.35 to 1.4. So they're kind of saying heads benefit more, aim for body less, sort of, or just don't go for the easy kill. Precision frame hand cannons have always been good while airborne, effectively having built-in Icarus grip. With the changes to airborne functionality, wanted to preserve that feeling while translating their advantage to the new season. Intrinsic switched from a 75% airborne accuracy penalty reduction to plus 25% or plus 25 airborne effectiveness stat. This means that if you had a Frontier's Cry with Icarus grip, it would be a 19 plus 25 plus 15 equals 59 before factoring the armor or subclass. So it already has a decent airborne stat on it. Okay, getting into the general buffs for heavy weapons. Machine guns aren't what they wanted, so they got a buff. Increased all machine gun damage by 40% against PvE enemies with a 20% buff to bosses specifically. Xenophage and Grand Overture received this buff except for the bonus versus bosses specifically. Sword stats have been inconsistent for a while now, so we tidied up all of these, mostly cosmetic, fixed several inconsistencies in stat display between different swords. This has no gameplay impact. Increased the charge rate of Solar Scar from 20 to 50 to match Temptation's Hook, because for some reason that was slower. Now, the rocket launcher subfamilies were divvied up, so they adjusted how they work. Basically, precision impacts get a minus 10% damage, both impact and detonation, so tracking doesn't do as much damage. High impacts, no change. This subfamily has the highest blast radius, though, and with adaptive and aggressive frames doing plus 10% damage. So, Royal Entry and Gallowhorn might not be the best option anymore. Just pick up an adaptive and aggressive that maybe has tracking, you know, that's how it works. Now, specifically with other ones, exotics. Exotics that shipped before Forsaken release now have their kill trackers visible by default. Fighting Lion got a little bit more of its buff, so then the Herd is gonna buff it a little bit more. Reverted the Season 15 Breach Grenade Launcher Blast Radius reduction, but just for Fighting Lion, increases damage by 0.5, so it reloads a little bit quicker with the buff active and that sort of thing. Eyes of Tomorrow got a buff that it got increased damage versus bosses and champions by 30%. Wow, that's good. Very good. Now, Leviathan's Breath. In addition, I kind of forgot I got Archer's Tempo with its Catalyst. So the Archer's Tempo perk from the Catalyst now has increased effect just for Leviathan's Breath. And the standard draw time scaler for Archer's Tempo is 0.75. It is now 0.5625x on Leviathan's Breath. Now, they also adjusted a little bit to be better against champions, added a small delay before detonation on champions and mini-bosses and bosses. This allows the impact to stun an unstoppable champion, you know, what it's made for, and the detonation to deal bonus damage against the stunned champion. The damage changed to be more of an even split between impact and detonation, and the explosion, or the increased damage across the board by 50%. Overall, damage versus champions is roughly doubled, even more compared to shooting an unstunned champion. I don't know why I was talking like there was more places to go. The Huckleberry! It got its increased zoom stat, as we already covered, and an experiment with Xenophage pushed it into the harder but slower machine gun, and it didn't really work. No one uses it anymore. Not really. So they increased the rate of fire and adjusted damage back to where it was. Its rate of fire is now back to 120 rounds per minute and reduced damage per bullet to match the previous. Doesn't benefit from the Season 17 machine gun damage versus bosses. It still has a plus 40% to everything but bosses, so it's back to where it was pre whatever season they got nerfed. Now, Laminarch, it's getting nerfed. The poison tick damage versus players is reduced by I was reading that right. Poison tick damage reduced by 25%, and change poison damage type from burn in general to poison. This is largely housekeeping, not gameplay significant. Increased poison tick damages against AI by 50%. Lord Striver! It's a thing that's so annoying. I can't believe they added this still, but with the change, getting left super weak by a body shot should be less common, though we're keeping an eye on how it should change. Reduce body shot damage versus players by 20%. This will also prevent it from being a one-hit kill, while an empowering rift combined with said change. Body damage reverts to old behavior, one of the weapon's damage mode, and previous precision damage in any mode is unchanged. Skyburner's Oath. Oh boy, they're trying to keep this back in a big way. Skyburner's Oath felt like it didn't have a niche, so they've done some work to it. Increased ADS projectile speed to be hit scan, so aim down sight is hit scan. Both ADS and hipfire are in general the range of a high impact scout at 150 rounds per minute. Hipfire projectile no longer tracks, but arcs similar to a grenade launcher and has a larger detonation size than ADS. The hipfire detonation also applies burning to its targets, so whenever Solar 3.0, this could be a nasty bugger. The bonus range from the Masterwork has been rolled into the base stat of the weapon. The Masterwork now grants bonus reload and reload speed instead, and it has the highest airborne effectiveness stat of any weapon in the game, which makes sense considering, you know, Cabal are all equipped with jump jets that let them mostly be airborne and deadly accurate. Now, the last word, reduced mouse and keyboard recoil penalty from 33% to 22%, so the last word can be used a little bit better on mouse and keyboard. Let's hope they don't regret that again. Something that a lot of people are angry for, even though I don't know why. Arbalest, reduced damage versus champions by 25%, but will still break barriers in one hit. That's what's important about it. It breaks the barriers. It kills shields and breaks barrier champions. That's what we need. And, oh boy, a really big buff to Graviton Lance. Catalyst changed from granting Hidden Hand to granting Vorpal Weapon and Turnabout. Wow. Not only did it get its kinetic, its primary exotic buff, it also got Vorpal Weapon and Turnabout. I'm using that over collective obligation, you can't make me not. Grand Overture, one's most recent adjustment between switching the missiles to fire in bursts of 5, which allows for more granularity and loading that damage, but sometimes you just want to let all of them fly at once. As a result, reduce the time between bursts when in missile mode. Holding the trigger now fires all missiles in a continuous burst. Tapping will fire the 5-round bursts, in case you wanted that. So, Cold Heart's exotic trait is more or less a trace rifle, so it no longer fits in a world with legendary trace rifles. The ease of use on sustained damage is also pretty low. As so, the sustained damage creates ionic trace, and collecting ionic trace grants energy to all of your abilities, if you forgot what they were. Increases grace timer before you get the damage ramp up, clears from 1.13 seconds to 1 second entirely. Prometheus Lens, solar damage type update, and generally this needed some tweaks to be viable. Sustained damage applies a more useful burn to targets. Wave Splitter, void damage type update, and the power cycling mechanic was interesting but ultimately hard to capitalize on. Power level no longer cycles randomly. The default damage output is the same as the middle tier of between low, middle, and high damage. Picking up an orb now grants 10 seconds of maximum power at capped at 20 seconds, up from 5 and 10. now suppresses targets while granted this mode by pick up an orb. So pick up an orb, it suppresses things and has max damage for longer and can go farther. Osteostriga's projectile somehow rotated by 9 degrees, looks a bit weird, so it now rotates properly. Lord of Wolves, reduced damage, fall off, start, and end by 25%, so it is not so, Lord of Wolvesy. Now, general changes to perks as follows. Snapshot sights. Increased ADS animation scaler from 0.5 to 0.75 for special weapon ammo types. Primary ammo weapons are unchanged. Can you tell this has been going a while? Opening shot is felt mandatory on shotguns forever, in large part that it gives you a buff as a damage fall off scaler. Remove damage fall off scaler. Increase range stat bonus from 20 to 25. Other stats from this perk are unchanged. 20 aim assist, 5% reduced cone angle, and 10% pain. Full choke has been the go-to magazine perk forever, justified or not. With this change, other magazine options should be competitive. Increased spread angle scaler from 0.95 to 0.9625, i.e. narrows the spread a little less. Smooth bore has always felt like an awkward perk, so it's getting a buff. Its spread angle is going from 1.1 to 1.075. It widens the spread a little bit less. Desperado nerf! Holy crap, yes. Increased fire recovery scaler from 0.415 to 0.7. It doesn't fire as fast with the perk active now. It's not double fire rate, it's just like half double, or 50% buff to it. Reduced irritation from 7 to 6 seconds, added a timer to the buff text, and removed the PvE damage penalty, so it's actually, viable in PvE. Air Assault was shelved a long time ago, but adding the airborne effect in the stat gave us the opportunity to return it. Rebuilt now grants just a general plus 60 to airborne effect in this stat when wounded, same trigger as Eye of the Storm. Mulligan was buffed, increased chance to return ammo on a miss from 20% to 35% on primary ammo weapons, unchanged on special and heavy ammo weapons. Compulsive Reloader shipped a little weak, and it's still just quite shit. Because now the stat buff is better, and they added a 0.95 reload animation scaler. It's more effective, but it's still not effective at all. So, yeah. Literally, you have a 30-round mag, and you fire 3 bullets, and then Compulsive Reloader is gone. It's worthless. Adagio is a bit adjusted, reduced the damage bonus from shotguns from 30% to 20, so, Fortissimo with Adagio no longer one-shots, sadly. But, you can still headshot, just aim. Lol. Icarus Script now grants the airborne effectiveness stat instead of its previous airborne accuracy penalty scaler. Basically, they did this. Adept Icarus Script now grants plus 15 to the airborne stat in addition to handling. Now, more stuff. Things leaving the loot pool next season. From Iron Banner, the Occluded Finality Sniper Rifle and the Finite Impactor Hand Cannon. Those will be gone. Nightfalls, the Comedian Shotgun and the Palindrome. Those will be gone. And for Trials, Shayura's and the Messenger. Those will be gone. By the end of this season, about a month, you will no longer be able to get any of those 6 weapons from any of their sources until they come back. But you still won't be able to get them. And by the end of Season 18, Iron Banner will lose the Peaceborn Sidearm and Archon's Thunder Machine Gun. Nightfalls will lose Plug 1 and the Hothead, and Trials of Osiris will lose the Eye of Soul and the Summoner. With a note, Season 18 is a ways out. Weapons included in our planned rotation are subject to change. So stay tuned for announcements on weapon rotation info and the new weapons coming to activity. So, oh boy, we're still not even done. Axiom Bolt base cooldown increased from 91 seconds to 152 seconds. Titan's Barricade base cooldown with the Bastion Void Aspect is up from 82 and up from 53. This matches recharge rate of Warlock Rift. Offensive Bulwark now provides 60% less bonus grenade energy in PvP game modes. Whisper Chains now provides 15% bonus damage resistance against players from the Stasis Crystal, down from 35. Unchanged versus PvE targets. Renewal Grass. While equipped, Renewal Grass increased the base cooldown of Dust Field grenades from 62% to 152. The outgoing damage penalty applied to player victims in the Renewal Grass Dust Field grenade is reduced, so they do more damage now. Damage unchanged versus PvE targets. Stay tuned for the full patch notes article planned to release alongside the hotfix. So, next week, Gambit Labs is out, where it's going to be Moat Feith in this. Normal Moat Drain from having 2 blockers is disabled. It said every second the invader is invading 1 Moat Drain selecting from your bank to the invader's bank. Keep in mind, though, invaders will need to be near the bank in order to drain moats. This won't be much of a hide-and-seek affair. So, yes, invaders going to be a bit tricky. But continuing forward, we have, you know, more prime drops. I'm just trying to get through this and various other things. So this is the issues report. Now, the contest mode emblem grant update. Players who completed the Battle Disciple raid during the 24-hour extension of contest mode have been granted the day at the Pyramid Triumph and the Cleaver emblem. Qualifying players will need to visit their postmaster and claim the lost package to unlock the day at the Pyramid Triumph. Claiming this triumph will drop the Cleaver emblem. So, for the quest archive, players who missing quests and are attempting to reacquire previously abandoned quests should visit the quest archive in the tower courtyard located next to the postmaster. From here, players can reacquire abandoned quests and organized by quest type. Players who are unable to relocate their abandoned quests at the quest archive should be able to verify that they have checked all their vendor pages of the vendor who originally provided that quest. This is the timeline for when the hotfix will be going live. This, I don't know what's... Some of the issues changed. Is going to be the Summoner Auto Rifle missing its masterwork, the Light Blade and Burst Plates of the Vial not counting towards completion of Total Conquest Triumph, and in Gambit, the Primeval Shield sometimes is not successfully dropped from defeating envoys. I'm losing it up here. Known issues. Renewal Grasp damage buff does not always function within a Dustfield Grenade's area of effect. The Sweet Sorrow Auto Rifle has an overly bright muzzle flash, blank text. Words in text chat may display vertically. This can be resolved by restarting the game. And Lumina's muzzle flash is a bit bright compared to other hand cannons. And per the usual, for the full list of issues here. Now, I think that's everything. Or things. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Okay, that was over 40 minutes, and okay, I'm just done. Thank you for everyone watching, and my name is Matt Scorpion, and goodbye.
We live and we learn, we dream and we die. We stop being concerned, no chances keep on passing us by. We're looking up.